Thank you for coming to this presentation. The title of my study is Incidental Alter Collocation Learning from Task-Based Reading, the Impact of a Structural Support. My study was motivated by the persistent difficulty in acquiring alter collocations. The previous studies have shown that it is feasible to acquire alter collocations from meaning-oriented reading, and a few factors have been identified, such as the frequency of target collocations, the congruency or semantic transparency, or input modality. And a few focus on form techniques have also been explored, such as input enhancement or glossing. But the problem is, regardless of their specific research focuses, previous studies have generally employed reading tasks aimed at overall comprehension. But we know that reading in real life does not always entail full comprehension of the text. And depending on the requirements of the reading task, the same text can be processed substantially differently. That said, it should be important to investigate the impact of task factors on L2 learning from reading, such as pre-task instruction or planning, external or internal support, task structures or procedures, or post-task reflections or task repetitions. Against this background, the goal of the study was to see if manipulation of task factors may moderate the amount of incidental alter collocation learning from task-based reading. It has been well known that readers can process the same text in a distinct manner depending on the goal of the reading task. Kakinen and Hyuna, for instance, found that task-relevant sentences elicited more extensive processing of the text as evidenced by longer reading times during the initial reading. Going one step further, the task-relevant sentences led to better retention of the text information, as indicated by higher scores on both oral and written recall assessments. In order to understand goal-oriented reading, McLeod and Shaw proposed goal-focusing model of relevance. According to them, reading goal shapes readers' intention and coherence standards. This influences their prioritization of information that supports the successful completion of the reading task. And task-relevant information is processed more extensively, leading to distinct mental representations of the text and varying levels of learning from the identical text. Christensen also proposed good enough, underspecified, and shallow reading model. According to him, readers often employ heuristics-oriented and frugal text processing strategies that provide them with the most efficient approach to achieving the task goal. And readers tend to prioritize plausible interpretation, not necessarily complete interpretation. In fact, in my previous study, I examined differential amount of L2 learning from different L2 reading tasks. In this study, the task was reading and writing integrated task. Participants were asked to read an essay first, and then they wrote an argumentative essay to refute the point of view presented in the reading prompt. One group received content support that could be useful in writing the refuting argumentative essay, while the others did not receive any support. And it was found that those who had to write on their own without any content support tended to better remember the target word forms which were contained in the reading prompt. It seemed they processed the reading material more intensively than those who could rely on the content support during writing. In other words, all these findings seems to show the significance of task features such as task instruction, goals, internal or external support in shaping readers' processing strategies and subsequent learning outcomes derived from engaging in the reading task. Against this background, the research questions were: to what extent does structure support affect L2 learners' attention to target collocations during task-based reading? And to what extent does structure support affect L2 learners' knowledge about the target collocation forms from engaging in task-based reading? This shows the overall design of the study. There were two groups, minor support and process support. In the first session, they completed consent form and Oxford placement test and vocab levels test. The two tests were to see if the two groups were equivalent in terms of their English proficiency. Then, under one of the two groups, they completed the editor task, which was immediately followed by the task difficulty questionnaire, true or false reading comprehension test, and then immediate post-test. 10 participants from each group were asked to produce stimulated recall protocols. Those who did not produce a stimulated recall took delayed post-test 2 weeks later in session 3. The participants were 101 L1 Cantonese and L2 English speakers, and their English proficiency level was high intermediate. The task was editor task. In this task, participants played a role as an editor of a magazine, and they determined if the articles, 3 articles, were acceptable for publication in the next issue. Under the minus structure support group, they simply asked to check either accept or check for each of the 3 articles. Under the plus support group, participants received a list of criteria for evaluating each article, such as topic relevance, suitability for the target magazine audience, content and organization, and comprehensible language. And for the structure support group, they were asked to read these criteria thoroughly so that they could have these criteria in their mind when they were reviewing the articles. There were 15-minute time limit, and while they were reading the articles, their reading processes was measured with eye tracking technology. After reviewing each of the 3 articles, they completed subjective task difficulty questionnaire and true or false reading comprehension tests. When answering these questionnaire and reading comprehension tests, the other participants were not allowed to refer back to the text so that they would not be exposed to target collocations once again. Attention to target collocations were measured in terms of the total fixation durations and total fixation counts captured on the target collocations. And knowledge about the target collocation forms was measured with the collocation form recall and recognition test. The tests were administered immediately after and 2 weeks later, the editor task. Each item was followed by confidence rating, in which participants were asked to rate the level of their confidence about their response, and all items were randomized. And stimuli recall protocols were collected from the 20 participants immediately after the editor task. This was to gain further insight into the qualitative information on the nature and the type of cognitive processes involved while engaging in the reading task. Now, and then quantitative data such as eye fixation measures or post-test scores were analyzed with mixed effects modeling, whereas stimuli recall were coded using MaxQDA. Now let's take a look at the results. You can see Oxford placement test, vocabulary levels test, task difficulty questionnaire responses, and reading comprehension scores on their different groups. What was found is that the 2 groups shared equivalent English proficiency and vocabulary levels, and task version without support was perceived to be more difficult for the participants compared to the structure support condition. And structure support did not significantly affect participant reading comprehension scores. This shows the eye fixation indices, total fixation duration in milliseconds, total fixation counts, and total reading time taken for reviewing each article. The total fixation durations and total fixation counts, both indices, were significantly greater for the plus structure support condition compared to the minus structure condition with medium to large effect sizes. And structure support led to more attention to the target collocations. When it comes to post-test scores, you can see recall scores, and then recognition scores for immediate and delayed tests. And structure support made a significant improvement for both recollocation recall and recognition tests in the immediate post-test, but not in the delayed post-test. Structure support was shown to promote stronger retention of knowledge about the target collocation forms in terms of both recall and recognition abilities, while such an effect did not last in the delayed post-test. The stimulate recall comments provided further insights. That is, more comments were made on having difficulty in performing the reviewing task for the minus support condition. Also, while the minus support group mentioned more on noticing the target collocations than the plus support group, they also tended to ignore them. Plus support group also made more comments on their pausing behaviors than the minus support group. And minus support group tended to reread text parts mostly to consolidate their text understanding. The plus support group, on the other hand, tended to reread for different purposes. That is, they tended to reread when they noticed new words or phrases, or to process the first or the last sentence or paragraph again. In other words, overall, stimulate recall comments reveal that more attentive reading processes when exact and explicit evaluation criteria were provided. So what do all these mean? Simply accepting or rejecting given articles was perceived as more demanding than understanding a list of reviewing criteria before reading, remembering them during reading, and completing a longer feedback form. This finding indicates that a clearer task structure leads to more strategic approach to the task, leading participants to perceive the task as more manageable, hence less difficult, fostering a sense of competence and confidence in task performance. Also, we found significantly longer and more frequent eye fixations on the target collocations for the plus support group. Those in the plus support condition provided substantially more comments on engaging in the inferential processes, suggesting their effort to process the articles more deeply. In other words, structure support encouraged more attentive processing of the text, leading to greater chances for noticing and processing the target collocations. Plus support conditions scored significantly higher in both recognition and recall tests in the immediate post-test. And participants in the plus support condition were shown to be significantly more confident as well for their accurate responses. This seems to indicate that promoted attention helped retain the target collocation forms and later recall and recognize them in the immediate post-test. Again, the finding underscores the importance of careful task design, explicit task instruction, and clear task structure to promote attentive and careful processing of the given L2 input. Regarding the lack of significant impact in the delayed post-test, pre- or post-reading activities where learners can use the target collocations in a meaningful way may be recommended for a more robust learning of L2 collocations. This study is not free from limitations. First of all, participants may have differed in their prior knowledge of the target collocations at the beginning of the study. However, I wanted to emphasize that this possibility was limited by using a thorough piloting with participants with similar English proficiency and learning profiles. It was concluded that the target collocations were very unlikely to be known to the participants of the study. Next, the study did not control the inherent characteristics of target collocations, such as semantic transparency, L1, L2 congruency, or vocabulary type, which should be addressed in the future studies. And the assessment tool used in the study, that is recall and recognition test, they might have not been sensitive enough to capture the nature of the target collocations, knowledge of the target collocations. Perhaps primed lexical decision task or measuring learners' neural waves while processing target collocations may be better at exploring learners' knowledge about target collocations in a more sensitive way. There are a few implications of the study. First of all, this study deepens our understanding of goal-oriented and task-based input processing and subsequent impact on incidental L2 learning. This study also offers practical guidance for designing and implementing L2 reading tasks, especially highlighting the importance of clear task structure. Methodologically speaking, this study improved its methodological rigor by combining and triangulating data from multiple sources, such as eye movements, stimulated recall protocols, and post-treatment tests supplemented with confidence ratings. Thank you very much.